Welcome to WizeUp. I'm Paul Arthur. Today I want to talk about education in Canada. Where are we going with this? Can you spell woke, by the way? Learning outcomes, not exactly what we were hoping for, I think. Not that impressive. And we're seeing far too much anti-Semitism in our public school system as well. If we have time, we'll also touch base a bit on Charlie Kirk's death and the response to that. We'll see how the show goes today. But before we jump in, I do encourage you to hit subscribe. Tell your friends about us as well. Always appreciate you doing that. Our guest joining us from Montreal is Barbara Kay. She is an award-winning journalist who has been a columnist with the National Post for many, many years. More recently, she also writes for Epoch Times and the Western Standard. And you can find a lot of her articles at barbarak.ca. Barbara, thanks for making time for us today.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
Always good to chat with you. One of the articles you wrote recently here was entitled Revolt Parents and Save Our Schools. Okay, right to the point. Public schools are teaching all kinds of stuff here. A lot of Marxism, leftist stuff seems to be kind of standard. Wokeism, if you will, a lot of stuff in there. So what are you observing in our public school system right now?
I think the situation, I think the word I used in my column was that it's quite dire. And I said that starting at in about 2007, 6 or 7, when the Liberal government came in, it was a Liberal government. It's now being continued by the Ford government. That schools are failing children on the grounds of pedagogy. They're not actually teaching content. They're teaching them social justice rather than content. They're failing them on providing a safe environment for certain students. And they're also not providing a safe physical environment. There's been an epidemic of abuse of each other, children on children, and children on teachers. And that is a direct result of policies that were brought in about 20 years ago.
Yeah, you mentioned too they're teaching things like critical race theory, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. The white privilege thing comes in there as well, right? And so the focus is on these kinds of things rather than some of the basics.
Yes, identity politics. They teach a thing, not only critical race theory, but something called CRRP, culturally responsible and relevant programming, or something like that.
I hadn't heard that one yet. Okay.
Okay, so that is a fancy term to cover what they are doing to decolonize, what they say they are doing to decolonize education. The belief here, the Marxist belief, is that white Western civilization came in, oppressed, and is an oppressive. Whites are by nature oppressive, and indigenous peoples are by nature victims. And that was the paradigm that was set up when the settlers came to this land, and it has continued ever since then in the same systemic relationship, which objectively isn't true, but
Yes.
they say it is. And so what they have done is they have elevated what they call indigenous, culturally relevant ways of learning. So that they will say that the indigenous ways of knowing are on a same level as Western style learning, and our Western style learning is based on Enlightenment values of evidence-based scientific, that what we take for granted as objective learning. But ways of knowing are based on intuition, instinct.
Unless you're gifted in something like that, I think most people would, not do that well designing a building, for example, on intuition. Yeah, I'm thinking some mathematical facts factor in there.
We can laugh, but it's not funny because this is the students are taught that there are different truths for different people, that
Hmm.
objectivity uh, makes some Indigenous people uncomfortable because that's not their approach to coming to do, or for example, they have this thing called discovery math, which comes from the same instinct to
Hmm.
you don't teach children the times table, for instance, or you don't
Who
teach them.
needs that? I mean, right?
No, yeah, but you let them discover math for themselves by. I'm not sure how it works. All I know is that it doesn't work,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we know that because math scores in Ontario have been going down and
Yeah, I
down and
saw
down,
that.
and they're not meeting international standards by any means. They used to be quite high up in the international rankings, now quite low down. Everything's going to pot. Learning is going to pot. They're just not teaching content. They're not
Hmm.
teaching objective facts, and they are teaching instead. It's all about social justice all the time and about identity.
Yeah, so we need something needs to change in order to prepare these kids for the real world that they're going to be entering in, 5 years, 10 years, etc. That isn't the reality you see in day to day life. I don't think. Right?
Well,
So.
that's true. They're not, but who are you going to tell to do that? That's the problem. The problem is that the Minister of Education, most people think the Minister of Education is in charge of education. That sounds about right. But in fact, the Ontario government, this was in the late 90s, I think, they decided to sort of hive off uh, the job of regulating teachers and evaluating teachers to a new entity, the Ontario College of Teachers, which would be its own regulator and not accountable, not really accountable. I mean, the Minister of Education is voted in. I mean, his party is
Hmm.
voted in, and if the Ministry of Education is responsible, and you see all these bad outcomes, then voters can say, "Hey, you're not doing your job." But the Ontario College of Teachers, you can't complain to them. They don't care what you think. They're their own, so
Well,
they.
maybe, yeah, okay. We need to get to some of that here. Why are they that way? Before we do, you mentioned something that caught my attention, violence in schools. You're saying it's not just peer-to-peer violence, student to student, but there's violence against teachers as well.
Yes, that's
Like where
yes.
does that come from? I mean, we
Well,
wouldn't dare
but
do that in the schools I was raised in, Going,
where
man.
that comes from is a new program that was. I'm trying to find exactly when it was. Oh yeah, it in 2005, only 7% of Ontario teachers had reported having experienced physical abuse from students. By 2017, it was 54%.
That's insane.
That's not even the worst. A 2021 academic report describing school violence as epidemic found that almost 90% of Ontario educators reported experiencing some form of violence. Why? Because they changed the rules around disciplining children. They felt that certain identity students were being suspended and expelled for acts of violence, and that they felt was a sign of systemic racism rather than the fact that these acts of violence happened to be coming from that source. So they said no, can't be suspending or expelling these students. So they started talking about things like restorative justice and redirection and some of the other words. I
Yeah.
forget what they are. Oh yeah, positive discipline, root causes. The upshot is that nobody was getting suspended, nobody was getting
Hmm.
expelled. The students that were creating the violence caught on pretty quickly that
Oh,
they,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's no
and
so no consequences,
no
and
consequences.
you expect things to change somehow.
Exactly. And not
Wow.
only that, but teachers were told. I mean, I remember the days when if you were say hurting another child or the teacher would intervene, separate you, and might physically restrain you from continuing to do what you were doing. So now the new rule was no, no, no. Teachers are not allowed to lay hands on a child, even if it's to just stop him from doing something. They can only act as a shield. So they can protect someone from being beaten up, and they get beaten up in the meantime. But I'm not making this up. This is really true, and all in the name of equity and
Yeah.
making sure that, another thing that they used to have in the schools in Ontario, and it was a really good program, was the school resource officer program.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They had
yeah,
police
they had
officers in the schools, right?
police would come to the schools,
Yeah.
talk to the kids, uh, you know,
Be a good
they
role
would.
model for them.
Yes, and they would speak, deal directly with kids that were considered at risk. They would tell them, they might even, show them what it was on the streets, what it was like for people that had chosen a life of crime or drug dealers or
Hmm.
whatever. They were. It was a very good program, and it actually helped to keep uh, these kids in line at the schools.
So why
Uh,
did they stop something that's working?
Because they did a survey of how people felt about the program. Most of the teachers and students all agreed it was a terrific program, but a subset of students who happened to be Indigenous and Black said that they felt uncomfortable seeing police in the schools. So that's all they needed to hear, and they ended the program in many of the schools. And honestly, I have read, by the way, reports from the police themselves who evaluated their own programs, and they had wonderful stats. They had wonderful diminution of violence. Kids that were at risk ending up no longer being at risk as a result of these role models, as you mentioned. Some of these children don't have fathers. A lot of them,
Oh,
actually.
it's very common,
Yeah.
unfortunately. I've seen the studies on it.
And so
Yeah.
these, officers, of course, they were both men and women officers, but some of these male officers were providing a very
Hmm.
positive male role
Yeah.
model, and now a lot of that has been done away with.
And if you
Everything
know,
that Go
uh,
ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, if that's really a big issue, okay, why not reach out, include these subsets of students, and okay, let's maybe assign some black, some oriental, some indigenous police officers to fill those roles. Problem solved.
Well, you'd think so because that's logical, and I'm sure that the Ontario officers do are not simply white males. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure there are
I'm
a
sure there is
mix
diversity. Yeah.
because they have reached out. They do have outreach programs to attract a diverse and Ontario. Needless to say, Toronto is the most multicultural city in Canada
Yeah.
in terms of the mix. So I don't think that's the problem. I think it's the idea of just law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so what if it made them uncomfortable? I mean, my
Again, real
feeling
life.
is
You know what? You get out there, and that's what you're gonna see. That
you're
there's
going to see
police
that on
officers
the
on the
streets
street.
as well, so you better get used to it. And
Yeah.
we can't
Oh,
always be comfortable. We can't be 100%
yeah.
comfortable in our lives every
Yeah.
minute of the day, and we have to sometimes be uncomfortable. And certainly that is an attitude that they certainly expect Jewish kids to have,
Hmm.
because
We'll come
lots
to
of
that
Jewish
here
kids are,
right away.
yes, yes, good
Yeah.
segue, eh? We're gonna
Okay. Well, before we jump into that, real quick, I was going to say, I mean, I think for most of us as adults, grown-ups, when we look back, even, decades ago when we graduated from school, we came from this cloistered environment into the real world. It was like, bonk! You ran into a brick wall. You go like, wow, this is really different than what I did last year. You get out in the real world, out of the education system, you're in the work world.
Yeah.
The reality hits you in the face pretty hard. So we need to prepare better our
Yeah.
students to face what's coming down the pike for them. Now, you mentioned anti-Semitism here. Again, our public school system, I think we would all agree, It needs to be a safe place for all kids, no matter what their racial background is, whether they're straight or gay or well, whatever whatever background they're from. It needs to be a safe place. Okay, and apparently not so much for anti-Semitism for Jewish kids. There's an issue, it seems, here in Ontario particularly, but we see it across Canada.
Yeah, the issue is that the schools are places where this ideology has taken hold, that you either belong to, your identity is paramount. Who you are as an individual is much less important than who your collective, what is your collective identity? And there are two kinds of identity. There's the identity that puts you in the class of oppressors, and there's the identity that puts you in the class of oppressees or the oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And Jews fall under the heading of white supremacists. Some ideologues even say they're more white than white, even though many Jews in the world are not white at all. But
Yep.
never mind that. So they are considered, if their feelings are hurt, that's too bad. They're oppressor class because they are representative of Israel, and Israel is considered an oppressor nation. And that's it. The end of story. There's not. It's nobody's allowed to kind of deny that. These are kind of the givens of the situation. So rampant anti-Semitism coming from a couple of sources. A lot of it comes from the faculty themselves, who are very far left, many of them. And another source is kids from Islamic countries where anti-Semitism is rampant and where it's considered a fact of life. It's just, they don't even recognize it as a form of racism. It's like hatred of Jews in certain countries is mother's milk. It just goes with the territory, so it's not considered unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not questioned, right? But we would not expect this from, as you point out, our teachers. These
you
are
wouldn't
these
expect
are
it from it. No, you wouldn't.
Yeah. Now
I have to say that we've had a few reports on that have really assessed the situation. One was, if you recall, Deborah Lyons, who was had been appointed the special envoy for combating anti-Semitism, and she had been in her post for she resigned at the beginning of the summer. I think she felt she wasn't getting the cooperation but it doesn't matter why. But she did submit a report before she left on anti-Semitism in schools and in society at large. And when I read her report, I mean, of course, the numbers are just simply shocking, like really shocking. The skyrocketing, especially since October 7th, the massacre, the Hamas genocide in Israel. And there was one anecdote that hit me with special force. And it was an anecdote about a child in the Toronto District School, one of the Toronto District School Board's schools, 6 years old, grade 1, and the teacher was talking about identity, what else, and was asking the children, what their identity was, and it came out that this child had one Jewish parent and one not Jewish parent. And the teacher said to her, well, that makes you half human.
You gotta be kidding.
I'm not kidding.
That is so beyond the pale.
Oh, I know it's to me. I was like, boy, where am I? Is this 1934 in Germany, or is this 2025 in Ontario?
Yeah, most of our viewers are going, she got fired on the spot. Then this teacher, right?
Well,
not so.
Not so much. No, she did not get fired on the spot. Obviously, the parents made a complaint. And what happened was the child was transferred to another class, like blame the kid. Yeah, you lose your friends and your place in your class. You go to another classroom, and she is still teaching in the same classroom.
How is that possible in Canada?
Well, that is the question. And another question I ask myself is, Where where does she get the idea that this is an okay thing to say to a child under her protection? Like, how did that come out of her mouth?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Unbelievable.
okay, so somewhere along the line, she, I don't know her ethnicity, I don't know anything about the teacher.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, I mean, either she comes herself from a background where hatred of Jews is, as I say, so non-controversial that in her mind it was perfectly legitimate to make a statement like that, or she went through an indoctrination process
Hmm.
that actually also taught her that Jews are not really fully human.
Well, you
And
wonder, is this, again, systemic in our academia?
well, something like it
Who's
is
teaching our
systemic.
teachers,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
something like it is systemic because children, I would say that is a very extreme statement to make.
Hmm. Hmm.
But the idea that Jewish children may be present in classrooms where they are taught that Israel is evil, that it's an apartheid nation, that poor Palestinians are suffering under, and they are bombarded with this, and this is Israel's fault, and Zionism is racism, and Zionism is evil, and Zionism is an affliction on all of mankind, and so forth, so forth.
Yeah.
And children then, when they walk out in the playground, their other children like spit on them and say Zionist, Zionist. Like, what do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah.
You
So,
know,
whatever happened to, robust debate? Let's present both sides here. Here's the pro-Palestinian side. Here's the pro-Israel side. Let's think it through. Let's look at the facts, objectively, and have a debate. And teach the kids at the end of the day, if you disagree, you're still friends. What happened
well,
to
because this is a very touchy subject, obviously, but when you say debate, look, if you're talking about young children, they don't know how to debate, and
right?
I can tell you this, that you go through K-12, you will not ever find anything that even resembles a balance. You'll find all kinds of speakers and programs that, push uh, the Palestinian narrative. You or even in the old days they used to the old days already. I'm calling them. For example, they no longer teach. There used to be the International Day for the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Well, now they teach Holocaust under identity. So here's how it works. So Jewish children are allowed to, on Holocaust Day, remember the Holocaust. At the same time, Muslim or Palestinian or Middle Eastern children are allowed to uh, have their special day under what they call the Nakba. The Nakba is the Arabic word for disaster, and that is what they call the day that the Israelis, or they weren't, it wasn't Israel yet, that the Jews of Palestine won the War of Independence when they were attacked by five Arab armies, and they won. And so they became the
Wow.
Arabs that had left in anticipation of coming back after the victory. They didn't come back, so they were refugees. That is
Yeah,
what they
that's on a
consider.
whole different level than the Holocaust, though. I mean, that's a.
You
I
think?
mean, that's not comparing apples to apples.
Well, no, it
Uh,
isn't. It isn't.
yeah.
One of the techniques of the anti-Zionist narrative is always to make the comparison it's called Holocaust inversion, or
Hmm. Yeah.
so it's they will constantly be talking about Zionism is the new Nazism.
Hmm.
The Israeli soldiers
Yeah.
are the new Nazis. They will call Hamas a resistance movement
Right. Rather than a
rather than
terrorist
a
movement,
terrorist.
which
Yeah,
is
than
far
a
more
terrorist.
accurate.
So
I'm just looking at the clock here, Barbara. I'm
oh,
sorry
sorry,
to jump
sorry.
in here. I just want to ask you: could you share a little bit? What can parents do? You talk about we need a parent revolution here in our schools. How can we go about bringing some change? What can parents do? Do they need to meet with their teachers, with their school board? The people they elect to run the school boards, the trustees there, or do they need to talk to their provincial politicians? What can be done?
Well, all of that is helpful. There are groups. There are groups that you can join. One terrific group I would really promote is it's called Blueprint for Canada.
Okay.
.ca, and it all of the things you're talking about, they do it, but in a very organized way. And my own prescription would be that voters have to together, parents have to become political, and they have to convince candidates in the next Ontario election. They have to say, look, this is a very serious issue for me. My children is not learning what he's supposed to learn or she is supposed to learn. They are being subjected to biased, constant indoctrination. I don't want them to become political pawns for any movement, which they are being now. And this is a serious issue for me. And the person I'm going to vote for is going to be the person who takes it as seriously as I do and promises reform. And that means the Ministry of Education taking down the Ontario College of Teachers and taking back their responsibility to become, to surveil this is systemic in the unions, the school
Yeah.
boards, all of it. They're all overrun
And I
with
think you're
ideas.
right, Barbara. Parents actually need to get the chutzpah here to speak up, to organize together, gather together, there's strength in numbers, and actually speak out, take action. Otherwise, this is going to keep on crumbling and at our own peril
Absolutely.
for our own kids. I'm out of time here again. BarbaraK.ca. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tell your friends about us, WizeUp.ca.